G'day guys, welcome back to TMPNET Project, Not Enough Time. I'm Andrew, here we are in the shop with Ivy. Sorry, it's been a couple of weeks. I have been super busy. I went up to the lake last weekend and got a bunch of little things done on the 101 as well as some stuff done at the lake. It's got back cold, it's cold again, both here and up there. So what I have been working on the last couple of days, kind of part-time, I'll show you now. But I have a bunch of stuff on the go. There's a bunch of stuff coming together right now, parts and bits coming in. I'm kind of overwhelmed by too many projects and not enough time, by little parts of the projects. So this video, I'm just going to quickly run you through these fancy contraptions here. Came out of the 101 on the dash on the passenger side, and they are, can anyone guess? Put it down in the comments below. Good, you got the comments done. Who does that anyway? Anyway, appreciate it if you do. These are gun mounts, or a gun mount for the passenger side of the 101, being of course not ex-military, depending on who is asking. And the, come up close here, the facing inside where the gun stock would kind of clip in and mount, these were covered in a green felt. Now this one is pretty ratty, but wasn't that bad, but is kind of worn through and ratty. The other one basically was non-existent on the two of these. So what I did, I got myself a new leather belt, and this is what's left of the old one. Oop, clearly not long enough to get around me. So got a new leather belt, cut up the old one, which happens to be the perfect width to put inside of there. It's a little heavier than the original green felt kind of stuff. Probably, would it have been leather? Yeah, would have been a real thin kind of green colored leather, but we got a heavier, thicker brown covered leather, and we replaced the rivets with new rivets and a couple of new bolts and screws, because there was a couple missing, and there we go. So we're going to mount these back in the truck, and once I got them mounted, I'm going to show you what I'm going to mount in them. Won't be a gun, because that's not acceptable these days, even though legally you've got a gun license, you got to carry your gun around somehow. But I'm not carrying a gun around on the dash of my truck. But let's get these installed and I'll show you, and then I have a second project after installing these, so stick around for that little project. Part of Ivy here. Let's see you out front in the 101. Patience. Alright guys, so here we are in the Patience, the 101. So these basically just mount up here on the dash. And for those that follow along on Facebook as well, you'll have noticed that Patience is now back down at home, away from the Iceland of Camp Tinny up at the lake. Brought her back last weekend, and oh my god, what a trip that was. You know those days where you wake up and you look outside and you think, yep, not going anywhere, not even driving anywhere today, and then you don't? Well, Griffin and I, my son, got up, and after 4 days of plus weather, +2, +4, +3 Celsius, which is whatever that is in Fahrenheit, just above freezing in Fahrenheit. Where's that hole? Come on. Oh, I think these holes are actually, wow, well, look at that. These are not generic holes between these two. They are located differently. And so anyway, we got up after a few days of plus weather during the day. Saw the snow and ice on the roads and highways all kind of melty and slick. And oh, this will be difficult. And we'd already loaded patients up on the flat deck trailer along with a quad for my neighbor to bring it back down to their house on the way home. And there was 6 inches of fresh snow on top of that slippery ice. So we and they hadn't plowed, sanded, and they don't salt up there in the middle of winter, but they hadn't plowed or sanded or anything on the hills, no nothing. So off we went, and I think because I'd convinced myself we were going in the ditch that day is what saved me from going in the ditch, because that was one hairy ride, I gotta say. And what's normally a, I'll say 7 to 8 hour drive, normally 7 on a perfect summer day with perfect roads and no real traffic issues. Yeah, I think it was a good 11 hours later we managed to get home. Managed to stop and drop off the quad, and that was interesting too, because we rolled it off the trailer to which was a couple of, well, yeah, a couple of kilometers away from where my my friends live, my neighbor's summer house, which is still up in the middle of winter, just a little closer to town. And rolled the quad off, and it was plumb out of fuel, so I had to call them and get them down to bring down a jerry can of fuel, fuel it up, and then rode it up. I really should have had gloves and a sweater or jumper or jacket or something warm, because man, I was cold by the time I rode that couple of K back up the hill and dropped it off at their house. And then she had trouble backing the truck out of the parking spot. It was all slick and icy and kept sliding it up against towards the house, so I backed it out and drove it down for her. And then on the way down to where I was parked, safe, I would have never got the truck up to where their house was, the bunch of streets up where they were. So anyway, so on the way of driving their truck back down to drop me off, one of the neighbors had managed to bog their ride-on lawnmower in the snow, trying to clear snow off the driveway. So we stopped and assisted with that, because they'd had a flat battery and bogged, so we got them out of the rut and got them going, and then managed to get that back down and get back on our way again. So it was quite a journey home. I managed to finally find a couple of 10mm spanners, and fortunately they weren't with the sockets. Still got to find the sockets. Alright, gun rack reinstalled. I mean, what I'm going to install in these is my 5D cell flashlight that oddly enough I got way back when I was in the military in the Navy in Australia. And I think that is a perfect mounting location and handlebar and an oh shit bar next to this oh shit bar in the 101. There we go. Putting the old gun racks to good use. Cool. Another one. Check that one off the list. We'll see you back inside with Ivy, and we'll get the next little project completed on Ivy. Alright, here we are back inside. It's getting awfully chilly out there. We're in for 4 days of snow and freezing rain as of starting in a couple of hours, although looking outside probably less than a couple of hours before we start to see some of the white stuff. Mind you, I love snow. I don't care if it's snowing, I'll drive anyway. And I don't mind shoveling the sidewalk. Love it. Love it. Okay, so the next little project we're going to do on this video is to do the transfer case slash engine mount, basically. The mount for the gearbox and transfer case. Now what I've done originally, in fact one of my very first videos, was modifying and adapting and creating this style of series transfer case mount, because the series mount to the transfer case. So we used some Range Rover parts. I think this one we made from scratch, but using the traditional Disco Range Rover Defender engine slash gearbox mount, transfer case mount, bushings and mounts. But this is a lot of chunky area. I think it's, yes, this one here. The right hand side of the transfer case was fine. That was this one here. It was quite slim. I'm thinking, however it worked out. It was quite slim. There we go. Quite skinny, quite slim. Worked just fine. Nothing has to pass down that side of the engine. That's the side of the transfer case that has the outputs for the front and rear differential. This one was fine. Don't have to get anything else down here between the two really close transfer case and the chassis rail. As for the left hand side of the truck, that was these two here. Quite chunky, not really all that modifiable, because we also have to get, because the stainless Y pipe is almost here apparently, got a non-catalytic converter stainless Y pipe, because this truck's old enough that it doesn't need, even with the modifications, doesn't need here in Canada, at least in BC, a catalytic converter, because we're taking the registration of the Series 1. And it was just too hard to remodify all this to get an exhaust to go through the middle here. So what I've done, I struggled with this decision at the very start of this project as to which way I should mount the transfer case and gearbox. I opted for the transfer case mount as per the original series transfer case. The two rubber mounts are opposing on angles, which for rocking the engine is a very good way to support it. Probably the more superior than what I'm going to do now. But what I'm going to do now is going to open up a little more room to be able to sneak an exhaust down that side of the engine and transfer case without majorly recreating this big monstrosity, trying to get the angle. Anyway, I think what I'm doing this time, I can always go back to these because I'm not modifying them at all, but I think, well, unless I would have to modify them one side. So what I'm going to do, if anyone knows the Discos and Range Rovers, about midway down the chassis they have a big round tubular crossmember that mounts under there. I still have that from my Range Rover that I disassembled, which I think, well, I've done two like that now, but anyway, from the last one we did, the gold long wheelbase 93 Range Rover, that round tubular crossmember, I'm using that as my gearbox mount. Now I say gearbox mount because on the Advanced Adapters adapter that we're using to adapt from the SM65 Chevy 4-speed gearbox to the Series 1 transfer case. Advanced Adapters has an adapter. Works very slick, very good. Very impressed. That adapts those two gearboxes together. And underneath that adapter is a plate and mounting holes for a gearbox mount or transfer, whatever, gearbox transfer case mount, which is this mount here that they use. Very compact, very blocky, just a single mount underneath. Now I assume it's more than strong enough because this is a design for bigger, like Chevys and whatever other conversions they do with these, with the series transfer cases. Anyway, so I don't have the side-to-side support, but I do have this support. So I think this will still be more than adequate for what we need. So this top section bolts straight up to the adapter, and then underneath that they do send this 2-inch square tube with all the holes drilled out. Oh no, actually that's meant to go on top here, not below. So then you still got to come up with a place to mount this bottom, which here's one that I made earlier. Basically this mounts to the transfer case adapter, and then this is going to weld onto that round tube. Anyway, let's take you under the truck and I will show you how it's going to all go together. Let's go. Alright, so we got it out. She mounts underneath like this. We got our tack welds, and I got to put a little dent right here because the forward output of the transfer case is like an 1/8 of an inch clearance right here. So basically right here, after I weld this plate in, I'm going to give this a bit of a wallop with the hammer just to give me an extra, maybe even if I clear it out 1/4 inch. That'll be plenty there. And then so I plate this, weld this, gussets on the ends here. This is where the mounting pad is hanging down under the chassis, so we will probably somewhat trim that up like that. Trim it up like that. It doesn't need to go down any lower than here because that's the mounting point, this dot in the middle. Make that hole bigger. That's our lower mounting bolt hole. Elongated a little bit, just like these ones. And under here, there's a couple of little, well, there's a drain hole, I guess, is what it is. Just trying to decide whether I make this bigger, because I got to get a nut up to put on that bolt. Anyway, I'll grab a nut, see how much room there is, because of the wrench. So I think I will, actually now I think about it, I'm going to make that hole a little bit deeper so I can get a wrench on there easy and get it back out again. are back on another day. So yesterday we got the bottoms of these all trimmed up to where they need to be to match the bottoms of the brackets on the chassis. I opened up the holes on the bottom here so we can get a wrench and a nut in there quite comfortably when it bolts through the chassis. We got this element here all welded in, sanded up, nice and finished. I did manage to beat another about 1/8 of an inch, I can't probably see it in the camera, out of here, which will give me then, I don't know, at least the 3/16 between the transfer case forward output kind of hump off the front of the series transfer case, which comes right next to here. We had about an 1/8, maybe got up to 1/4 of an inch gap now, 3/16, 1/4 inch gap with this little beating we gave it. Just enough for a little bit of clearance. I think it will be fine, probably won't touch at all. If it does, well, we just make a little more clearance in the future. And then now to finish off just this mounting bracket here, so basically make a couple of tabs for the edges to provide a little more support area for the weight of the transmission to rest on this tube, because if we just weld front and back here, there's a chance going over bumps and over time that right along where these two welds are and this tube, it will eventually dint down. So we'll just add a little more support for lateral support, for forwards and backward motion, plus more surface area to stop this crushing this tube. Chances are it wouldn't happen, but hey, let's over engineer. Alright, let's make some brackets, get them welded on. So this tube is about 2 3/4. I don't have a 2 3/4 hole saw, but we're going to start off with a 2.5 inch hole saw, and then we'll just sand out a little bit so it sits over the tube nice, coming down each side of the tube to give us a little more surface area, and then cut it to shape. So, there we go. It is all reinforced on there. I think that's over-engineered, which is what I like to do. Now the one thing left to do on this side here, but I can't do it until I get my new white pipe in. Because through this area somewhere will be the white pipe passing through, or the exhaust passing through, and depending on where that passes through here will depend on what I do with it. I'm not really sure. Coming right back to you. I may need to take some, gotta be careful, it's still hot. Yeah. Put a piece of this through here somewhere, somehow keep it strong, to make allowance for it. Let's see. But won't really know until I get the Y pipe and see where it sits. And then I can take the next step of then fabric cobbling. I think the last step on this that needs to be. As far as height goes, I did set this to the height that we set the engine angle to match the differential angle before. I don't think I'll need to go any lower on the engine at all. But if I do have to go up a hair, I can always just put a shim in underneath the transmission mount. Alright, let's throw it back in the truck. Now if you've ever put these cross members in and out before, these guys, or any cross member mostly, but certainly in the discos and the classics and anything, you'll know that you need a little spreader going on, so you just spread the chassis out just a hair to make these go in and out, so you don't have to wallop on them with a big frickin' hammer to get them in and out. So I got my 10-ton hydraulic unit in here, just to give a little and let's slide it in. Oop, sorry guys. Alright, as we can see, there we go guys. As you can see through here, this is where the exhaust is going to come. So hopefully I can just do a cutout in here, put a piece of large pipe in, it'll rest right through the middle here without cutting all the way through. Anyway, we'll find out when the exhaust arrives. There we go, mount done. You can see the clearance over there around the front edge of the transfer case. Alright guys, another little bit of weekend's work done. I got another step to the project to get onto a little later this afternoon. I'll go and edit this video. Thanks for coming along. Appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate your appreciation below. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.